Accountability is a central theme that underpins virtually everything that we'll be talking about in this course. Accountability is a notion as the acknowledgement and assumption of personal responsibility for actions, decisions, and results within the scope of one's role or responsibility. It's all about the obligation to report, to explain, and to be answerable. It's a key component of what we do as managers. It can be thought of in the context of a strategically focused organization where you look first of all as what is your strategy, what is your mission, what's your vision, where are you going. Your vision speaks to what the organization aspires to be. And the strategic plan should also lay out how the organization intends to accomplish their goals. The accountability framework needs to speak to the indicators of the progress. How are you going to achieve specific goals within the context of the strategic plan, and how you're going to translate those into operational terms, how you're going to align the entire organization to the strategy, and how are you going to make strategy everybody's job. As well, what's critical is that you have a structure in place that reports and tracks so that you can monitor, are you indeed making progress towards, are you tracking towards the objectives that you set strategically? So that's essentially what we mean by the strategically focused organization and what we want to accomplish in the context of an accountability framework. We need to be accountable, we need to report, we need to provide documentation. Virtually everybody in the organization, doesn't matter whether you're the CEO or whether you're a board member, there's always an accountability to somebody, whether it's to the public, whether it's to government, whether it's to your shareholders, whether it's to the owner, whether it's to your vice president, whether it's to a director. It doesn't really matter. There is at some level a degree of accountability from a staff person to a manager, to a director, and up the line. We look at different frameworks. One of the most popular frameworks that's evolved over time is the notion of the balanced scorecard, as articulated by Norton and Kaplan in their various articles in the Harvard Business Review. So what are we talking about when we're talking about the balanced scorecard? In essence, what we're doing is looking at the organization from multiple dimensions. We're looking at it from the perspective of financial, how our funders see the organization. We're looking at it from the perspective of the customer, how the customer sees it. We're looking at it from the perspective of growth and development. Are we innovating? Are we learning? And we're looking at it from the perspective of efficiency and our internal processes. We're looking at it from all those dimensions simultaneously. So it's not just one perspective, not just financial. It's, in Norton and Kaplan's view, the balanced scorecard has the 4 dimensions: financial, customer, internal process, innovation, and learning. All those dimensions can be oriented towards the strategic directions of the organization, and that's the key link, is taking the balanced scorecard concept and framing it in the context of the strategic objectives of the organization. And why is that so popular? Because it works. There's great success in many organizations as to how it can be done. Accompanying this video, you'll see a picture of what the balanced scorecard looks like. Once you put the framework in place and you align it to your strategic directions, you can start to develop specific measures that you can identify. Some are reasonably straightforward, such as your financials. How are you doing in terms of your operating budget, your capital budget? Is your hospital in a positive working capital situation or not? Is it running a deficit? Those are the kind of key financial measures that you want to look at. From a quality perspective, from how the customer looks at you, you can look at things like patient satisfaction, you can look at readmission rates, you can look at deaths. There's other kinds of indicators that you can use in that regard. From the perspective of performance, you can look at things like length of stay, avoidable days, alternative length of care days. There's lots of kind of measures that you can look at the departmental level And that's a key question to ask is, well, how do we measure performance? Are we measuring it on a regular basis? If not, that's a problem. How are you being accountable if you're not measuring and if you're not demonstrating results, pay for performance, if you will? The other dimension that's really important is the notion of learning and growth. Are we investing in our staff? How is our staff looking at the organization? Do we have a workforce where people are motivated, or do we see indicators that perhaps there's issues? So for example, in a unionized environment, we might look at a number of grievances. So those are the kinds of things that we can look at. We should also set targets. So it's one thing to measure, but ideally we should also be setting targets that will actually allow people to strive for improved performance. It's not just enough to measure and to track, but ideally one should set benchmarks and in the best of all worlds, stretch targets. That's not always easy, it's difficult, hard to know, and some people are a little concerned about the notion that stretch targets will open the door for criticism, but I would suggest that's a risk worth running. You want to actually strive for improved and better performance. At the end of the day, one should try to put this all together in a comprehensive, coherent report so that you can report up the line, so to speak, from the level of the manager to a director to a vice president and eventually a corporate roll-up that can be presented to the board and subsequently externally to the public and to the funders and regulatory agencies. That, in a nutshell, is what we're talking about with an accountability framework, and I hope that you will be encouraged to dig deeper into the literature and the readings that have been provided in this course, and we'll go from there.